Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Going Off Track podcast. I'm Kathryn. That's Emily. Emily, you are in a very interesting, special new location today, aren't you?
Yeah, I am currently podcasting from Mendoza, Argentina. I am back. I'm currently sitting in a bathtub because this is the wonderful, glamorous life of a traveling podcaster. No, I this has the best light in the hotel, and so that's where I am. So, yeah,
Yes. So
yeah, it's
this
great.
this is the adventure that we are having.
The adventure that we just keep having, honestly, this has been my whole life. So if
Yes.
I'm adjusting myself throughout the podcast, just ignore me. It's fine. It's just gonna happen
Yes.
regardless. This is such a bad angle, but that's okay.
Yes.
Anyways,
And if you hear
yeah,
if you
no.
hear noises outside my room on my side, it's because there will be screaming children out here in about 20 minutes. So the window is closed. Hopefully we'll minimize it as much as possible. But yeah.
I don't know how we
Summer
do
of
it, Catherine.
podcasting.
I just don't know how we do it. Yeah, welcome to our summer.
Yeah, so bear with us. There are no bears physically with us, but bear with us, and soon we will return to normal podcasting audio standards. But until then, let's talk about some news before we dive into the Austrian Grand Prix.
Let's do it, even though this first bit of news is just extremely depressing, and I know that we're both upset about it and
Yep.
have thoughts and feels, but unfortunately, Carlos Sainz Sr. has bowed out of the FIA president bid and race. I don't know. His whole thing is present circumstances are not ideal to set grounds for my candidacy, whatever that means. I don't know. I feel like this was forced. I feel like I'm upset and mad at him, and we didn't get like a really, truly good reason. I don't know.
Well, it's so when I read the statement, and the statement is out there on social media, you can look it up. It's long, but the one word that jumped out to me that I sent to you as soon as he released it was the word reputation, and that he didn't want
Right.
his to risk his reputation in his specifically with like the Dakar racing that he does. But I really feel like, and nobody is going to be able to convince me otherwise, that he used the word reputation to imply that not only is his reputation at risk, but also his son, the Formula One driver's reputation, would also be at risk if he tried to pose a serious challenge to the current president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, who is trying to take Formula One back to the the dark ages of when Bernie Ecclestone had all of the power forever until he was finally forced to go.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it felt forced, like someone was forcing him to do this. I don't want to go as far as be like he was being threatened, but it's clear someone had a conversation with him, and that's why he's no longer doing it. Like, not from his camp, but like another camp approached him and was like, "Hey, do you really think this is what you want to do?" Wide eyes, like, yeah,
There would have been retaliation, and even Carlos Sainz, the Formula One driver, even came out and said that as a motorsport fan, this is very unfortunate
yeah,
circumstances to not have Carlos take this opportunity. And alongside that, Mohammed Ben Sulayem is using his current power within the FIA to make it difficult for him to be challenged in any way by anyone. So we could be in for a very long time of dealing with this man.
yeah, which is just unfortunate because I mean, it doesn't seem like everyone is head over heels in love with him. And you want to push the sport forward, and it's unfortunate that it's turned into like a power grab instead of what's truly best for motorsport. But
Exactly. So that is a thing that is happening. We will continue to monitor what is happening with the FIA presidential bid as we go to the upcoming elections, whether I believe are going to be at the end of the year. In this case, it's going to be a long 6 months, y'all.
unfortunately, it will be. But yeah, like Catherine said, we'll continue to watch and just see MBS, continue his reign. But in other more lighthearted news, the F1 movie came out, Catherine.
It did.
It's so exciting. So we've been talking about this what feels like for 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of because it has been because of the writer's strike and everything. But yeah, so Catherine and I both took breaks from our very busy, crazy lives and went to see it, which is super exciting. I was fully anticipating paying $4, and turns out Argentina is expensive now, and it was like $15 to go to the movie, which is just unheard
Woof.
of. But I digress. I know. But overall, it made a ton of money opening weekend. So it opened with 140 million, which is about half or a little under half of its total budget. So usually big blockbuster, big films have a hard time kind of recouping their investment and their budget. But I think they'll be able to. I mean, this movie it opened worldwide. Everyone's going to see it. They've done such a good job with promo. The music, the album is amazing. So I think this will be considered a success overall.
Yeah, I read, I believe it was a Deadline article saying that this is Brad Pitt's biggest international release of his film career. So this has been,
which makes sense, yeah.
And I completely did not know. I didn't really know what to expect from the tone of the movie going into it. But the first thing I said to you, and we're not going to do spoilers in this one, we're going to do spoilers in an F101 episode to really break down our thoughts on a lot of pieces from the movie and, the stuff surrounding it. But I did not expect to sit down and watch a comedy.
I know. And I mean, I watched it in Argentina, so I watched it with subtitles. So, of course, I laughed, and then 5 seconds later, like, everyone else laughed. But which is like the highlight of my movie-going experience in Argentina. But no, I was surprised, but I liked it for levity because it was like a lot of action and a lot of movement. So having like a little break here and there with like some levity, some laughter, I really appreciated. I don't know if they intended for all of the laughs that they got, but they definitely had me laughing. So I liked it.
I honestly have not laughed harder at the movies in many years, and there was definitely some elements where it was like I'm laughing because I know the context behind certain things. There were a ton of Easter eggs of like modern Formula One type references, and then just also because it was funny and the way that they took the tone. I think you can push back on this, but I feel like the racing moments were some of the like funniest, unless they were being dramatic on purpose. And that was where I was the most entertained with the movie, which is also what we expected. We expected to be most entertained by the racing aspect of the movie, and the rest of the plot was just kind of going to be there to be there.
Yeah, no, I agree. The racing was good, and I honestly think that's where Lewis came in, because to quote the Brad Pitt interview that I listened to for the umpteenth time, he said that Lewis came in like post-production and was like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. You're using, like, you should be 3 gears lower than you are, so that's the wrong song of the engine and XYZ. So I think that's it's like, cool, how do you know that for a random corner? But I think that's really where he lent his expertise and really made it more real for the F1 fans of knowing the sounds of the car. And really getting the racing bit right.
Yeah, and I think that they really did well. There was a moment that I talked about from watching the trailers of, oh, that is a clear reference to, in this case, the Romain Grosjean crash in 2020. Like I was like I like that bit from the trailer looks just exactly that. And spoiler alert, yes, that was a clear reference to that happening. And there were a ton of Easter eggs like that. There were a ton of references to like famed commentary moments. Obviously, Crofty and Martin Brundle had cameos. Will Buxton has cameos all throughout the movie. A lot of the typical F1 presenters we see from F1 TV and from Sky. So I thought it was really great that they had a lot of those elements without overdoing it too much. And also really gave us a great behind the scenes of like the dramatized inner workings of the teams.
Yeah. No, I agree. Also, last thing, Roscoe gets a credit, and I think that's so amazing. He does.
Yeah, Roscoe Hamilton getting an actual credit in the movie at the end was one of the funniest moments. Now, and I want to point out, for those of you who have not seen the movie yet, be on the lookout for Stefano Domenicali's cameo in the movie. It's one of the funniest things, right up there with George Russell's cameo in the movie. Those were two of like the top moments where I was just falling over myself laughing.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yes.
So, yeah, Kathryn and I will have another episode talking all things about the F1 movie in more detail, plot, spoilers, everything like that. We obviously have way too much to talk about in one episode with our recap from a race, so we will get that in another episode. But to recap Austria, I have a lot of thoughts and feels on this, Kathryn, truly.
Yeah, Austria was... It was disappointing because Lando won, but it did give us some of the best wheel-to-wheel racing we have seen at least all year.
I agree. And I think it's McLaren arguably is the only team with like a really good car that both drivers feel comfortable driving.
Right.
And I say that because they're consistently together, right? Like Red Bull, we have Max and Yuki is somewhere. Um, and there's generally like separation, but these two are literally on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really good racing, really good fighting. I love that McLaren was like, yeah, it's your call, like if you want to go racing or not. I think Oscar did a really good job of trying, and then it just got too dangerous, and he like made the smart decision to kind of back.
Yeah, they really they raced together, they raced clean. They were able to fight without having to worry about the rest of the field because Charles in P3 was very early on upwards of 20 seconds behind them. And unfortunately, they didn't have the greatest pit stop for Oscar and kind of miscalculated on when to pit him, and that set him just a little bit too far back. And the other problem with the Red Bull Ring, where this works really well in the sprint, but when you're in a regular Grand Prix at the Red Bull Ring, that track is so short that you're going to be in traffic almost immediately. And that was the
Yeah.
biggest reason why Oscar couldn't really get close enough to Lando going into that final stretch of the race.
Yeah, and to like stop and pause for a second, the radio call where Oscar's like talking about Alpine, is that real or was that like AI generated? Because I couldn't tell because I was also watching the
I
international
I didn't
broadcast, so it
hear
was
it.
different.
I didn't hear it, but I'm pretty sure it was real. Like I'm like
Oh my God.
everything that I've been seeing is telling me that he really did say that about Alpine, which going all the way
I love.
the fact that he brought that up is just amazing. And if you don't know, we have a whole episode on the 2022 silly season, which was the greatest adventure in silly seasons until Lewis decided to announce that he was leaving Mercedes for Ferrari.
Yeah, no, that's so great. I absolutely love him for doing that. It's so funny that he can like just still troll Alpine from afar, literally afar, as he's, on every single podium, it feels like.
Yeah,
But
that
so I
said,
think,
Alpine did kind of mess with him because like Franco went after Oscar. I don't know what kind of miscommunication there was because Franco didn't realize that he was a lap down and that Oscar was behind him trying to get through, but that also did not help Oscar's attempt to win this race.
no, so speaking of Colapinto, so I'm here in Argentina, and I went to my friend Gaston's house to watch. So it was him, his wife, and I watching. And as soon as that happened, they're like, "Oh, Franco, no!" Like so loud. And I was like, "This is so funny." I love watching with Argentine, but I was also really upset because Oscar clearly, like, I feel like he backed off of Lando a little bit, but that really just screwed him at the end. So that was unfortunate. And then, Colapinto ended up getting a penalty, which also sucks for him. But yeah, I thought between the two of them, like, and McLaren as a whole, they did a really good job on this car this year. Like, they're just so far ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like Ferrari brought in this monster of an upgrade package this weekend, and it was good for 3-4, but still 3-4 were significantly behind the rest of the field. Like pulling up the results, yeah, Charles was not almost 20 full seconds off of the pace. Lewis was almost 30 in P4, and then you have George in P5 at 62 seconds off.
Right, and I think that's another thing. Like, the McLaren of this year, it's nowhere near, but it's kind of comparable to the Red Bull of 2023, right? No one was close. Max was way out in front. But the Ferraris did look good this weekend. And so Gaston and I both like Ferrari. And he's like, I don't think we can compete. I'm happy with 3-4. I'm like, we're on lap 10. Let's just pump our brakes because Ferrari can do a lot worse than this, and they probably will. Like, I feel like you just jinxed it. But they didn't. They didn't screw themselves. They actually had a good race. I'm happy with 3-4. I think that's really going to help them in the constructor standings if they can just continue to get 3-4, 3-4, 3-4. Because I don't think, 1-2 is reasonable unless something happens with one of the McLarens. Like, they get knocked out.
This is going to be a fight between Mercedes and Ferrari for P2 in the championship at this point. And
Agreed.
Yeah, if these upgrades are going to allow the Ferraris to outpace George and Kimi, then we're going to continue to see that. And then before we dive into the Kimi of it all, Liam Lawson was the only other driver. Sorry, there are children yelling outside my door, but Liam Lawson was the only other driver who did not get lapped by the lead runners. Like 1 through 6 were ahead, and then everyone 7 through the end of the field, they had all been lapped at least once, which, like I said, is a problem that you see with the Red Bull Ring. But also, like, this was Liam Lawson's career best finish in Formula One at P6, and that was a huge day for him in the car.
Right. But I feel like he didn't do anything besides qualify well. You know what I mean?
No,
He was just kind
that's
of
true.
there.
Which is something that we see typically from, say, George, who does nothing and gets a P3, or Charles, who does nothing and sits in P4 all race. So that was really, I mean, either way, it's still a really good confidence boost, especially considering everything Liam has gone through throughout this season. Like, if you can spin out a good qualifying, then in this season that we have, where qualifying really is going to dictate your finishing position, give or take 1 or 2 places maybe, unless something happens, then this is really big for Liam, knowing what he can do at the top of the field. And you don't really learn that as a young Formula One driver until you're up there.
Yeah. I still just don't like him, and I don't care.
I know you don't like it. It's fine. It's fine.
But I do want to talk about someone who actually really, really impressed me this weekend. I guess a team in general was Stake. Like, you could have told me that they would get a double points weekend this year, and I would have laughed in your face. But little did we know that it was, coming in Austria. And yes, Bortoleto did great. He had his first points in F1. But can we just talk about Nico Hülkenberg going from P20 all the way to P9? Like, are you kidding me? He was my driver of the day. Hands down.
Yeah. Hulk has been really showing how valuable it is to have an experienced driver in a bad car. We've seen that with Alex Albon with the Williams, and we'll talk about Williams and how they didn't have a great weekend. But typically, Alex Albon has been outdriving the Williams. Nico Hülkenberg is doing everything he can in this car, and this is the first time they've had a double points finish since Qatar 2023, when they were still Alfa Romeo, which you'll also see in the F1 movie because it was before they rebranded.
Love. But yeah, no, I thought they did really well. And also, Bortoleto drove very well. He did have to fight. He did have to, really work to maintain his position. Which I think is great for the rookie, not taking anything away from Liam Lawson, but I just think it's a bigger deal for Bortoleto because he's in the Stake car. But I thought they worked really well as a team. I thought they did, a really good job. And it's never fun to see someone just be miserably bad all season long. So it is nice to kind of see them jump into the points. They've clearly done some, upgrades, improvements. They're getting more comfortable with the car. But yeah, it's, good for Stake. They're very anonymous. They're not going to do anything in the championship, but it's nice that they're, getting points.
Yeah, and we had a nice fun moment of Bortoleto fighting with his manager, Fernando Alonso, and he joked afterwards that, like, it's a good thing I didn't crash into him, or else I wouldn't have had the flight home, because they flew out of Austria together. So I think that it's so funny when you have someone like Fernando, who's like his boss, technically, outside of his bosses with Stake.
Well, technically, he's just part of his management team. He's not, like, his only, like, singular manager. But I digress. Yeah. Okay, you brought up Albon earlier about, like, how he's been doing really well with his car. But this weekend was just such a disappointment for Williams. It was so sad. We had a did not start and a did not finish, and it's just so depressing. As a new member of the Williams bandwagon, I feel like they started off strong, and now they're just they're losing it a little bit, which is really sad to see.
Yeah, I mean, this is their first double retirement of the year, which is good that it's taken them this long, but still a double retirement when you have a driver who can't even get off the grid because of whatever happened with the car, which also, if you watch the F1 movie, you will understand why that's funny, except also, Carlos has a really bad time in Austria in general because his car has caught fire in Austria over multiple seasons and now multiple teams. So this is another, after Canada, this is not the weekend that Williams wanted in Austria, and they just need to like scrap it, move on, and just do something better at home in Silverstone.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, and then, the big elephant in the room is this whole like Kimi versus Max thing. I have never seen someone so distraught from getting in an accident. Like Kimi looked like he was going to melt and die, and he was just so upset and sad, and he went and apologized to him on the track. He apologized to him in hospitality suite. He just could not stop apologizing to Max, which I just think is so funny. But he's a kid. He probably idolizes Max a little bit, just because of who Max is. I felt bad for Kimi. I really did. As much as it sucks for Max as like their home race, I just felt bad for Kimi.
Yeah, I mean, Kimi and Max both handled it very, very appropriately. Like, obviously, I think the reason why Kimi went to the hospitality room to apologize was because he couldn't actually hear Max down on the track, or Max couldn't hear him down on the track. So he just wanted to make sure, and like he locked up the rears while fighting in a very chaotic opening lap, and that's kind of I don't want to say that that's what you get for qualifying in the midfield, because it like really it was avoidable on Kimi's part to have that happen, but Max was a sitting duck at that point, and it's been very interesting to see how the accident has been portrayed in the media, of how how the headlines look of like Kimi and Max and Kimi crashed. It's Kimi crashed into Max, but of course the British media bias, TM. So I thought that was interesting. Kimi, of course, based on the new guidelines that the FIA has released for penalties, another Max Verstappen rule. Now, Kimi has gotten a 3-place grid penalty for Silverstone, and on Max's side, Max is now down to 9 penalty points. He did not race in Austria, as we all speculated, other than, a portion of lap 1. So he did miss Austria, but he is now down to 9 points. So we can speculate less about if Max is going to be at risk of a race ban, because his next points actually don't fall off until the end of October. So there's a lot of time, but also like Max has a little bit more breathing room at 9 points instead of at 11.
Yeah, which is nice. But speaking of points, is that because he didn't finish at all, like obviously he didn't even finish a lap, he is falling behind in the Drivers' Championship now, which I did not see coming.
Yeah, you and I both expected him to have a stronger weekend, especially based on how he performed in Canada. But instead, Max is now 46 points behind Lando for P2 and 61 behind Oscar. Now, is that insurmountable? No. Is that very difficult? Extremely difficult. And even for a driver of Max's caliber, with the issues with the Red Bull, it would take McLaren having issues for the distance to tighten up enough for Max to, be reconsidered as a serious contender. I'm still listing Max as a contender because obviously mathematically it's still possible, but
yeah,
there's a lot of it's really looking like it's going to be an Oscar versus Lando.
For him to be up there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be Oscar versus Lando. There's 15 points between those two drivers. And so it's going to be really interesting. Will Joseph, Lando's race engineer this weekend, was really instrumental in keeping Lando thinking the right way and on plan. And so Will Joseph is going to have a lot of work to do to keep Lando driving like that, or to give Lando a chance to win the championship, which I'm on Team Oscar in this case. I think that this is Oscar's year.
I think we all are on Team Oscar, which also I think is very reflected in our picks.
Yes.
So let's just
Oops.
jump into our Austria predictions here. So Kathryn and I picked pole, podium, and P10. We give ourselves points if we get something right.
We
Have been
didn't.
really struggling as of late. We got nothing right, not even close. Pole, we picked the wrong McLaren, so Lando was pole, which I feel like this should be asterisked because of how it qualifying ended.
Yeah, let's talk about
But
that
it's
for a
fine.
second. Let's talk about
Okay,
that
go
for a
for it.
second because they're like, this is Lando's most dominant qualifying of his career. Well, yeah, it was dominant. No one had a chance to put in a fast lap. Like,
Yeah.
I know that's like media whatevers and the, making, let's not let the facts get in the way of a good story, as my old boss used to say. But thank you, Pierre Gasly. The field was a lot, like, were the McLaren still going to be further ahead? Yes. But was it going to be as far as Lando was ahead of the rest of the field? No. And I think the media needs to calm down, even though we know that they love Lando so much and he's the British media golden boy.
We picked the wrong McLaren, moral of the story. And we just continued to pick wrong for the entire weekend. So for podium, actual podium was Lando, Oscar, Charles. You had Oscar, Charles, George. I
Oops.
had Oscar, Charles, Max. Oops. Gaston, my guest picker, had Charles, Max, Oscar. And then Sarah, your guest picker, had Lando, Oscar, and then either Max Verstappen or George. So she actually kind of got close, but she missed Charles.
Yeah, so she got 2 of the 3. Congratulations to Sarah. You were the closest, even though close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. And you get no points because none of us do.
Okay, also, I was like maybe 29 years old when I learned that it was hand grenades. I thought it was hand brigades. I don't know
Okay.
why that would make sense, but someone was like, yeah, like a grenade. I'm like, no. I'm like, yeah, if you think about it, like if it's close, it still blows up. And I was like, oh, you're so right.
Ooh.
So,
yeah.
Anyways, back on track here. So P10 was SD Bestie. You were really close. Nico Hulkenberg got P9, which never would have thought that was possible, after qualifying. And then I picked Carlos Sainz, and he did not start. So way off on that one.
Oops.
So if you're keeping track, Kathryn and I did not get points this weekend yet again. So go us. And then for just some funsies, biggest surprise, you said it was going to be a strong home weekend for Red Bull. It was absolutely not.
Nope.
And I said that Max was going to close the gap on Lando, which he absolutely did
Nope.
not. And then who's going to do a dumb? You said that Ferrari upgrades don't work. They absolutely did. And I said that Lando was going to struggle. And he didn't. Not. So even for these, we did miserable. Austria was just not our weekend.
No, it really wasn't.
But it wasn't our weekend, but I thought we were back to like good fighting racing, even though it was from the same team. We did get some really good quality racing. There was a lull there for a little bit, and then it got exciting again. But no, it got me, excited to be back in the F1 world because I've been out of it for a little bit. I've been on vacation.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a good race. It was weird waking up early for it with, within the constraints of the camp schedule and all of that. But it was good racing. Like I said, the fighting, especially at the beginning of the race between Lando and Oscar, was some of the best wheel to wheel racing I have seen as a Formula One fan, which I know it's only been 5 years, other than also watching 2016. But that was some of the best racing, and I'm really excited to see more of that. And also, I really do enjoy seeing Ferrari in the mix now that they're kind of getting their head on straight and kind of figuring things out and bringing these upgrades on.
I agree, and I think what I'm really excited for is next week when we have or this week, I guess, when we have Silverstone, because I feel like Austria is such a different track than the rest just because it is so short. I'm interested to see how the Ferrari upgrades translate to a more traditional style track.
Yeah, especially a track that Lewis has had so much success on, a track that is, celebrating so many teams base themselves in the UK. It'll be Aston Martin's home race, obviously Mercedes, it will be Williams's home race, everyone has a home in the UK. So it'll be very interesting to see how it performs, how the British drivers perform, how Kimi Antonelli performs as a new Mercedes driver in his new home race, give or take the whole German aspect, but whatever. But it would be very interesting. I'm very curious to see how teams react, especially with such a quick turnaround between Austria and Silverstone.
Yep. Agreed. Well, with that, up next we will have our Silverstone prediction episode, which will be out Thursday ahead of the race. I also just love Silverstone because it's always like 4th of July adjacent, which is just funny to me because it's like British, even though there's like no American ties to F1 at all right now. I just still love that fact. But yeah, so look for our prediction episode later this week. Thanks for going off track with us, guys.